Hey guys, what's up? It's Chase Jarvis, founder and CEO of CreativeLIVE. You all know that we have more than 2,000 classes and more than 10,000 hours of learning, inspirational, and motivational content on the platform. I'm super excited to announce a new experience on CreativeLIVE. It's called Fast Class. You've told us that you're busy and sometimes it's hard to dive into a full class from start to finish. So essentially, we're now giving you a shortened highlight version of our top CreativeLIVE classes. You can always dive into the full class with 5, 10, or 15 hours of great content. But now, if you're just looking to focus on a few of the highlights or want to be able to skip quickly to something that really interests you, you can now get a shortened fast class version of that class. We're also thinking this might be able to help you explore a new craft and save time while doing it. This is a great tool to curate your learning experience to help create the life that you seek. So you're probably thinking, great, how do I access this new experience on CreativeLIVE? That's easy. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Creator Pass, and then all this is yours.
Hi, and welcome back to CreativeLIVE TV. This is our 24/7 stream of what is happening right now, given the current circumstances. So we are going into the homes of our favorite creators every week and talking to people like today's guest, Andrew Scrivani, who you guys saw probably for the launch of CreativeLIVE TV on April 1st. He came on and taught us how to make arancini, and then we jumped into how to shoot it so you can post delicious photos while you're at home right now. So without further ado, I am excited to have Andrew here with me today to teach us a new recipe and then teach us how to photograph it, excuse me. So nice to see you, Andrew. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be back. I had a ton of arboreal rice left over from our arancini experiment. Okay. And I decided that today it would be a really good time to make some risotto. So we're going to make a risotto with broccoli because I bought a little bit too much broccoli at the market this week and it was taking up a lot of room in the fridge. So if you're like working on like fridge real estate issues right now, broccoli, I would recommend taking it off the stalk, cutting it up, putting it in a box or putting it in a container because it'll take up less space that way. So that's been my my experiment. I have almost everything all prepped out for us today to get started. Our recipe, once it hits the stove, should only take about 30 minutes. So we can, I'll take you through the process, and then I have some other stuff working in the kitchen I can talk to you about. But also, once that is set, we're going to run over to the table. I'm going to show you a couple of little tricks about how to plate risotto for photography, and then we'll take some pictures. So I think it'll be, we'll have a full hour of fun here, and you get to see our new 2-camera shoot here. We are just hacking everything imaginable, and it's fantastic. So I can see you there, I could see you here, and then wait till you see what we do with this camera. It's going to be like we have 4 cameras in my little kitchen here. So check it out. So do you, Kate, do you want to ask me anything to start, or do you want me to just jump right in?
Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about risotto because, like we were talking about before we hopped on live, we were talking about how risotto is a dish that I think a lot of people are intimidated by, and it feels a lot more complicated a lot of the time, probably because we've all heard Chef Ramsay yelling at people on TV on the Food Network for messing up the risotto. So tell us a little bit about the complexity of this dish. Should we be intimidated to make it, or is it actually a lot more simple than people may think?
I think it is definitely, it's an involved dish, but it's not a hard dish. And I think it's a very forgiving dish. It's not something that is easily messed up, because the reality is that you're consistently adding more moisture to it as you go, as we'll see. And if you find it's a little dry, you add more moisture. If you find it's a little wet, you cook it off a little bit more. So it's definitely not something you should be afraid of. And if you have the right ingredients, like the arborio or the cannaroli rice, that gives it that creaminess that you're always kind of craving with risotto. And then the other thing that I recommend, and you'll see in a second when I flip the camera down, is I mise en place my whole dish. I did reserve one stalk of broccoli just for informational purposes. I could put it right here, and you can't see my lips, because I want to show you what I did in terms of breaking this down into the 2 component parts for this recipe. So this recipe is a risotto with broccoli, and you break down the broccoli into stems and flowers, and then once you have the stems, you dice them, and once you have the flowers, you slice them. So you end up with this sort of little thin, like floury kind of things that cook really nicely. Then I have my stock on the stove simmering. The bigger pot in the background is another dish that I'm working on. It's a chickpea dish. It's just a nice, have it in the fridge kind of all week for lunch or a side dish for dinner. It's really nice to have. And then behind me, if you can see here, I have I don't know if you can see it. I'll show you later. It's a big piece of pork shoulder that I'm going to make into pulled pork this week. Ooh. So there's quite a few things happening on my work from home cafe feed on my Instagram story. If you haven't been there yet, it's at Andrew Scrivani. It's I've been doing recipes since the beginning of the pandemic. I have probably 22, 23 recipes posted so far. They're also on my YouTube page and in the story highlights. So if you wanted to go back and look at the story highlights, you can catch them there. So there's lots of really good practical information about cooking, particularly for those of us who are not seasoned cooks or really experienced or maybe get intimidated by risotto. So I think that's probably where we should start.
And just before we get, tell us a little bit about your background in food. I know, Andrew is a world-renowned food photographer, but he also started out as a chef, if I recall correctly, or has worked with chefs a lot. And I know last time you were on the show, you were making one of your grandmother's recipes that was really near and dear to your heart. So tell us a little bit about your background in food and what made you go to food photography in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, my food background is not necessarily back of the house. I was a front of the house guy. I definitely worked in restaurants as a waiter and that respect. But my back of the house experience basically comes from being a really skilled home cook before I started food styling, which was when I started getting food assignments as a photographer. And it was something I did in editorial world in early 2000s. Trying to pay food stylists to come in and work for very small day rates wasn't going to work. So I learned how to do a lot of things myself, and it sort of in the meanwhile became friendly with a lot of chefs and a lot of people in food. And we ended up with a skill set that kind of rivals that of, food stylists and chefs. So I spend a lot of time developing recipes now. I'm working on cookbooks as a sort of a consultant as well as the visual artist. So my experiences in food have sort of spanned over several decades at this point, so I've acquired quite a bit of knowledge.
Nice. Yeah, that's actually, I grew up in the food industry too, and used to actually be one of the managers of a very amazing Italian restaurant in San Francisco called Delfina. It is one of the best Italian restaurants in San Francisco, in my honest opinion.
I mean, personally, I'm a SPQR guy, but
okay, all right. All right, well, without further ado, let's jump into making this risotto, and I'll be asking some questions as I see them appear on social. So you get going, and I'll throw out questions as I start seeing them.
Okay, so what I want to do first is I'm going to flip this camera down so you can see my tabletop, and I'm going to go gently so that we get down to where you can see where I'm working here. I think that works. So I reserved this last broccoli crown. It's a little off kilter. Let me square it off. There we go. Okay. So I reserved this last broccoli crown here because I wanted to show you how I kind of disassembled it into these component pieces, which is, here are the flowers and here are the stems. So I sort of divided them up. So what I did was, first I took this and I just kind of cut off the bottom. And I'm going to hold on to that for a second. You can see already these are starting to break apart. So I pulled them apart. You hear that nice snap?
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times, sometimes this is a really nice broccoli that the stems aren't really thick and tough. But even when you get the thick and tough ones, you have the opportunity to shave them down a little bit. So that's why I reserved this part, right? Because this part has a little bit of a tough end on it. So I took that off, and then I'm going to just kind of start dicing this up. And once I start to remove all the stems, I'm going to cut them down into pieces about that big. So I still have this piece, which is a little bit tough, so I'm going to just kind of give it a little bit of shaving. But these stems retain a lot of flavor. And one of the things about making these kind of long, slow cook broccoli dishes is broccoli has a lot of like flavor that comes out after it cooks a little longer. So it's a lot more like, it has a richness to it. Broccoli, I make slow cook broccoli dishes all the time. And I really love the fact that broccoli takes on a different character when you're working with it in sort of a longer cook capacity. So as you can see, I'm just taking down to where we got the flour. If you watch my knife technique, this is something I'm going to talk about a little bit in some future videos. Is I usually cook with just one knife. I like this big knife. I hold it sort of, I choke up on it pretty hard, and I get a good pinch on the knife, so I have a lot of control. And then where I place my hands, I use that index finger as a guidepost. So that's as far as the knife will come, so I don't hurt myself. So I try very hard to adhere to that. And when I'm working with people in the kitchen, knife safety is something that I'm a big proponent of. I think it's better to work safely than fast. So that's sort of where we're at. Working here. And so you get the gist of that. We're not going to use this broccoli because I already chopped up the broccoli we're going to use. So in the meanwhile, I'm going to turn on the stove so we can get our oil going. I'll tiki over there. You can see me in the other camera, so you can see here. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in here, probably like 2 tablespoons full. Get that going. That'll be hot in a sec. So then the other part of the flour, I see the bottom of the stem still has something to bite into with the knife. And I will cut them down into those sort of little flowerets. So I'm going to do that with these. I'll save these for another dish. These are my demos.
And Andrew, I intuitively wouldn't have necessarily known to put stems in a risotto like this.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something? Do you work with stems regularly when you're cooking, or is this just a dish that really complements the stems?
No, I always use the stems. I like the way they taste. I think that it's it's good food that doesn't need to be thrown away.
Yeah.
So I try very hard not to waste. It's something that I'm pretty passionate about. Food waste, especially in our industries, is something that's kind of rampant.
Yeah, totally.
And I think it's important to, especially when you have a public platform to talk about these things, is to be really mindful that we can save food. There are parts of foods that we throw away that we really shouldn't. And that's part of why it's important. Hello, I'm back. It's important for me doing what I do and working with as much food as I work with to promote the idea of using food responsibly. So I like the taste, but it's also something that is no reason to waste. So
yeah, and to speak to your earlier comment of you being your own food stylist very often, you can then eat your food afterwards because you're the only one touching it.
Correct. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So do you think that you would like me? I think once I start to work here, you might want to see this from the chest cam, right?
Yeah.
So I
absolutely.
can pop this onto the chest cam in just a sec. This oil's getting very hot, so I'm going to just lower it while I put the chest cam on.
All right.
Okay,
Well, while you do that, I will remind everybody that this is Creative Live TV. If you haven't tuned in before, we are here live with Andrew Scrivani, a professional food photographer and a amazing at-home chef who is doing a work-from-home cafe every day of the week. You can check him out on Instagram at Andrew Scrivani, and he's done probably close to 20 recipes so far, and every Monday while we're going through these strange times, Andrew's going to be joining us at 12 p.m. on Creative Live TV to bring you a new recipe and to show you how to photograph it. So today he is making broccoli risotto, and it just so happened that when he was on a couple weeks ago, he taught us how to make arancini, and he had a bunch of rice left over. So now he's putting that extra rice he had left over, arborio rice, to work. And he's going to make us a little risotto and teach us how to not be intimidated by making risotto at home. So right now he is in the midst of putting on a chest cam, so you guys can actually look down and see what he is making. We have amazing producers, and and Andrew himself has MacGyvered lots of ways for us to make this as interactive to watch. So he is all set up now, and so we'll send it over to him. All right, so is this garlic, I take?
That is onion.
Onion. All
yes,
right.
So we start with onion. We're going to cook that down just a little bit. Keep the flame at sort of medium height, so it's not too, that's about where I'm at. So it's not too bad.
And are you looking to
make
those like
and as you can see here, I have my stock is already sort of warming up. So that's going to be incorporated in periodically. And if you're interested in what that is, this is some chickpeas that I've had on the stove for about an hour so far. It's a very simple recipe with onions, lemon peel, garlic, salt and pepper, and that's about it. It just cooks for a couple hours, and then you have a nice pot of chickpeas to work with. Excuse me. Oh. Okay, so we're going to cook our onion down just a slightly bit more. I want it to be translucent, but not brown. And this is the other thing you want to make sure of when you do the rice and the garlic is make sure your garlic doesn't get brown, because when the garlic gets brown, you get bitter tastes in your food. So you want to smell it. See, like I do everything with, I do a lot with smell. Like when.
Oh. It looks like we may have lost some sound. All right, looks like we might need to switch to a different cam. We lost connection to Andrew's iPhone, which is where we're getting the sound from. So while you guys hang tight while we figure out what happened there, but I'll talk to you guys a little bit about what Andrew is doing. So right now we have Andrew Scrivani, one of our amazing food photography chefs and a world-renowned food photographer. He is teaching us how to create broccoli risotto. Yeah. Sorry, I'm also talking to him right now. Yeah, we can't hear you, Andrew. We are working out some technical difficulties right now. My producers are in the midst of calling him back to get his sound back on. Oh, how to create broccoli risotto. Yeah, sorry, I'm also talking to him right now. Yeah, we can't hear you, Andrew. We are working out some technical difficulties right now. My producers are in the midst of calling him back to get his sound back on. Oh, how to create broccoli risotto. Yeah, sorry, I'm also talking to him right now. Yeah, we can't hear you, Andrew. We are working out some technical difficulties right now. My producers are in the midst of calling him back to get All right, and we are back. Apologize for the brief outage that we had. We're all working from home and figuring out how to make these shows work remotely with 4 other people figuring out tech issues. So we have figured out our issues, and we are back here with Andrew Scrivani on CreativeLIVE.com/TV, where you will see all sorts of performances. Andrew is making a risotto with broccoli. Last week he showed us how to make arancini, and this week he is showing us with his leftover arborio rice how to make broccoli risotto. So I will shoot it over to him so we can see what's going on with the rice.
All right, so we sauteed the onion until it was translucent. Then we added the garlic and the rice, and we mixed it together so that the oil would coat everything, and the rice and the garlic would cook down a little bit. And now we're ready to add the wine. So this is a key component to all orange risotto. Sorry, you said arancini before it got me. So you can, you hear that? That sounds amazing. So we're gonna cook this until the liquid pretty much is all absorbed. And this is the first step pretty much anytime you're making risotto with liquid is the wine. So you get the wine in there, maybe turn the heat up just a touch and let that cook off. And you could see when you move it around that the liquid sort of evaporates pretty quickly. So we're getting close, but you can also see how the all of the ingredients that we've kind of put in there so far sort of already starting to get a little creamy looking, and that's the aspect of arborio that makes it so nice. So you see, it's already sort of, there is no visible liquid anymore, right? It's perfect. So the first thing we're going to add is these stems, because the stems are going to take a little longer to cook. So we're going to mix them through. And then we're going to start the process that is what making risotto is all about, and that is the slow incorporation of the stock. Now, you can make this dish vegetarian, you can make this dish vegan. It all depends on whether or not you use a vegetable stock. I'm using a chicken stock today, and whether or not you choose to put cheese in later. So that's something that we're going to do right now. I'm going to start to incorporate about 1 ladle at a time, which is about a half a cup of liquid. So you kind of bring it across, try not to spill it all over your stove, which is what I usually do. And you go 1, maybe 2 ladles at a time, and let that incorporate, right? And you do the same thing you did with the... All right, Kate, I'm going to incorporate you into this recipe now. You know how? You're now my timer. So you're now going to let me know when 10 minutes have elapsed, because I'm going to cook this down for about 10 minutes. But in the meanwhile, we'll talk about, I'm going to continue to add our stock each time this dries out. So that's how risotto kind of is a kind of a labor-intensive dish, because you have to stand over the stove for the entirety of the time that you're going to cook it. So you could see now we still have some liquid creeping in. And this is the way to kind of test it, right? Kind of drag a channel, and then you could see how much liquid is left kind of creeping through. So this is a nice kind of having our little chest cam here gives us a good example of technique, right? And you could see, oh, we're almost there. There's almost no liquid. It's so exciting. The suspense is killing me. It's like waiting week to week for the new Westworld episode. What psychopath doesn't allow you to stream all 8 or 10 episodes at a time?
HBO just wants us all to go insane.
Yeah, no kidding. My God. Although last night's episode was really good, so.
Yeah.
Okay, now that we got our sort of baseline in there, now only one at a time. But you could see, like at the edges, if you don't stir it through, it will it will start to dry out and stick to the pan. So you got to be mindful when you're cooking this. It's not a leave it alone. This is sort of, you feel accomplished after you've done your risotto.
And tell me, can you make risotto if you don't have a Oborio rice? Is there other types of rice that we could use if you're at home and you don't have it?
You know, the rice that you use, the bumba rice that you use for paella, is also pretty nice short grain rice that you could use. And look, I mean, rice at the end of the day is rice. So if you really wanted to use like a basmati or any of those other kind of white rices, why not? I mean, I've made risottos with all sorts of rices, because when I was shooting for the recipes for health column for the New York Times, we did all sorts of different like sort of healthy options, and a risotto kind of technique was something that we always employed to sort of give people a familiarity with other ingredients. So you could do it with a wild rice. You know, the rice won't get as creamy. But it's absolutely possible to cook rice this way with vegetables, with even fish or meats, you know.
And it just absorbs the flavor. It's not going to necessarily be, like you said, this kind of creamy pasta dish that we necessarily think of risotto traditionally, but it's that like wild rice is still going to absorb whatever stock you're using and have a lot more robust of a flavor.
Definitely. Absolutely. That is definitely going to be the case. And so if you have whatever rice you have and you want to try out the technique, by all means, you can use water. You do not need to use stock.
Okay.
You can use, salt your water a little bit just so it has a little flavor to it. But you can absolutely make this with water if you don't have chicken stock or beef stock or any other, seafood stock. I mean, making it like a paella with a seafood stock is always nice. So that looks like it's about ready for some more.
And is your stock you make homemade? I assume based on it being in the pot there.
I do make my own stock. Occasionally I will use the store-bought, but whenever I make chicken, I take the bones and make some stock. Last night my wife made me a delicious rice cake soup, and she took the barbecue bones from the barbecue we had in the afternoon and basically cooked them down until we had like a nice pork stock. Oh. And then added some kombu flavored stock. We made like a Japanese kombu stock and keep that in the fridge. So we mixed that. So we ended up having like a dashi almost. And then with rice cake and a little bit of that leftover rib meat and an egg and some broccolini. It was delicious. If you want to see what it looked like, go to my Instagram story. It's probably up for another few hours before it disappears.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was delicious. And I don't eat pasta, traditional pasta, because I don't tolerate wheat very well. So everyone else was having ramen or udon. I can eat soba, but I can't eat udon and I can't eat ramen. So my wife made me the rice cake soup.
Sounds delicious.
It was very good. How are we doing on the timer? We got to be about halfway through, right?
We're about halfway, exactly. Yeah. 5 minutes have gone by.
Excellent. We're getting there.
So I want to tell you a comment that we have from Grady on Facebook. He is one of our star students. Hi, Grady. How's it going? Thanks for tuning in.
Hi, Grady. What's up?
He did watch your arancini lesson, and he was so inspired and had extra rice and made mushroom and onion risotto this week. So
see,
he was already
just
thinking
a natural fit. That's great. Yeah. That's terrific. It's such a natural fit. When you have this rice around, you just want to eat it because it's so versatile and delicious. I really love keeping it around. So, but you can see the process is slowing a little bit. Our liquid isn't evaporating as quickly because it's starting to absorb. The rice is starting to become full. It's starting to reach that capacity. But we're going to bring some more vegetable into this shortly. Now, I haven't seasoned this with anything yet. I haven't put any salt or pepper into this, but
okay.
I'm going to wait until we get a little bit further along in the process and then incorporate a little bit of salt and pepper. Now, if you really want to go crazy.
And from last night, was there a salt that was put in the stock, or there's no seasoning at all touching this quite yet?
This one? Yeah, no,
yeah.
I have this is not, there's no salt in this yet. I haven't done the salt yet, but I will incorporate some salt shortly.
And is there a specific type of salt that you like to cook with? There's so many variations. You know,
I have so many salts in my cupboard, but I tend to just gravitate towards either Maldon or just traditional kosher, like diamond crystal kosher salt. Yeah, yep. I think it's good to kind of cook consistently with the same kinds of salts that, you know, on your data for your day to day, because I think it's you get used to sort of that pinch and punch style of cooking, and you don't, if you start using other types of salts that might be a little bit higher salinity, and you can end up really ruining your food, because you kind of get into a rhythm of cooking without a recipe, you know, quite often.
Totally.
You know,
and that's why I like diamond, because it has a little bit less of a salinity than a normal kosher salt, and so you can feel a little heavy-handed and not be scared that you're totally oversalting your food.
Yeah, and I do love to oversalt the meats before I put them into dishes, and that particular salt does very well without, you know, it penetrates and gets into the meats, and it really brings out flavor without being too salty.
And then you have to finish with the Maldon, obviously.
Oh, of course. But I have some pink Himalayan that I work with. Pink Himalayan's very salty.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that. I do have some other, like I have a sriracha salt, which is really nice. I have like a mushroom salt that has sort of like dried porcini in it. So I have some other salts that I work with, but those are really special, you know, like sort of specialty salts. So what do you think, Kate? Where are we? About 7 or 8?
Yep, we're about 8 minutes, so we have a couple more minutes.
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe give it just like a half of ladle here, and then cook that off, and then I'm gonna incorporate those flowers next and cook those for another 5.
Okay.
And then we're done. Then we're actually almost there. We're gonna season it and plate it, and then we're gonna walk over to the table and take a picture. See how that looks. So, how's this? Is this mesmerizing you, audience?
Yeah, it looks delicious.
Watching me stir this. This is like one of those labor-intensive, watch the guy cook it from start to finish kind of recipe videos.
Yeah, and when it's laborious but simple, but even regardless of whether it's simple or not, it feels really good to eat something that put a labor of love into it.
Yeah, for sure. The more energy and time you put into any given dish, but you can see now the color change, right? You can see the color change in the broccoli, right? It's starting to lose color a little bit, and that's the stage with broccoli where it really starts to change flavor. So I make a dish, a pasta and broccoli dish, and I cook the broccoli to death. I really do. And it turns almost like a gray. It kind of loses most of its color. Okay. And man, is it delicious though, because it just takes on a whole different flavor. All right, so I'm assuming we're pretty close to 10 minutes, and this looks pretty ready. So I'm gonna dump this in here. Well, it's gonna be pretty full.
Yeah.
This is a full pound of broccoli. This is but you know, broccoli is going to break down. So this is going to start to release water. And this is about the time where I'm going to start to add some salt, because I want to encourage that broccoli to release its water. And when you do that, the salt will definitely help that. And then I will add some more later to taste. So I guess that was probably about a teaspoon of salt.
Okay.
Broccoli has a tendency to hold on to salt, like in those little leaves. And you got to really stir it through. So I'm going to get this all stirred through, and I'm going to need a serious amount here to kind of cover this and stir it through.
And remind us how much rice you were using in the beginning.
I used 1.5 cups of rice.
Okay.
I used 1/2 cup of minced onion. I'm gonna post the proportions for this recipe on my Instagram when I'm done, and I can also send them to you so you can post them. And you can see that this is kind of starting to stick a little bit to the bottom, so you got to scrape, and that's why I use this flat-headed wooden spoon, because it really helps kind of dig. I'm also trying to keep my body as steady as possible, so you're not jostling around. So this is about 5-minute timer. So if you are my timer again, Kate, then.
All right, we're 2 minutes in.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep adding.
I'll remind everybody, they are watching Creative Live TV. This is our 24/7 stream of what creators are doing to keep themselves motivated and inspired during this strange COVID time. And today we have Andrew Scrivani back. He is teaching us how to create broccoli risotto. This is after he came on a couple of weeks ago teaching us how to make arancini, and he had a little leftover arborio rice. So now we're making, with whatever leftovers you have, you can make this delicious looking dish. It is a broccoli risotto, and after we're done making it, which is just a few more minutes, Andrew is going to teach us how to take some beautiful photos of it so you can share it and make all of your friends jealous.
So, broccoli is not the only vegetable you can use a risotto. I heard somebody earlier say that they made a mushroom risotto, which would be made in a very similar fashion. You have to keep in mind that the rice itself will probably take close to 30 minutes of this process. So if your vegetables are something that would cook a little quicker, you might want to incorporate them a little later, or you might want to do something with them beforehand, like blanch them, or like do a quick saute, and that way they're broken down a little bit more, and then you can add them in later. But it's definitely something that you can do with many different kinds of vegetables. So I'm going to turn the flame off on that, and I'm going to give this one, probably got 2 more applications here to let that get creamy. I'm going to save that last little bit of liquid. Now, who's to say I couldn't borrow a little liquid from those delicious chickpeas on the stove? So if you're wondering, that's something I like to do early in the week, especially during the work from home cafe days, where I make a big pot of lentils, or I make a big pot of chickpeas, and try to do something vegetarian. We are meat eaters here, but I do know that my housemates are not as big of fans of meat as I am, so I have to be mindful that they're going to want to eat other things. What's my timer look like, Kate?
We're about 4 minutes.
Okay, so that's about right. So what I'm going to do is just let that simmer for a second without stirring. I'm going to tamp it down so everything's sort of in there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to incorporate the last ingredients that we have, which are the cheese. Maybe I'm going to taste it for a little salt and pepper, a little parsley, and that last bit of liquid. I think my pepper's over here, which would not hurt to put it in. Put it in now.
And I assume that the cheese is Parmesan, but is there other types of cheese that you would recommend throwing in here if you don't have Parmesan?
Normally it would be Parmesan, but I am more of a Pecorino fan. Okay. And again, I had Pecorino left over from making arancini.
Yeah.
So I really love Pecorino, and when I do the pasta dish with the broccoli, I also use Pecorino. So Pecorino is a sheep cheese. It is very comparable to Parmesan in terms of its use as a grated cheese. It's delicious, it's salty, and it's something that I love to cook with. So I am using a Pecorino today. So I think we're getting dried out here. So here goes the cheese. That's 1/2 cup of cheese. And here goes the remainder of our liquid. And I'm going to actually turn this flame off. And I'm just going to stir this through. And you could see how creamy and amazing that looks right now.
And it looks like that you did a very fine grate on that. Is that something that is necessary or makes it easier? Yeah.
I don't know that it's necessary or easier. I mean, maybe than like a big box grate.
Yeah.
But I mean, it'll definitely incorporate easier if it's fine grated. But this is so hot that this is going to melt whatever you put in it, and it's just going to get it's going to melt it all down. But I think we have a pretty finished dish here.
Yeah, it looks delicious.
Looks delicious. But of course, before we put it out for consumption, you got to get your chef's spoon and taste it and see where we're at. I have a tendency to oversalt food, so this time I went a little light. So I think I'm gonna probably want some. Nope.
I'll share a little story while you're tasting that. Before we hopped on this morning or this afternoon to show you this recipe, we were talking to our producers and they were saying, well, you know, with a cooking show, it doesn't actually have to taste good. As long as it looks good, that's all that matters. And Andrew piped in like, excuse me, you know it's going to taste good. I'm making it. He was not going to let us joke around at it potentially not being as good as it looks. And so I assure you this recipe is just as delicious as it looks.
And I nailed it with the salt, because the saltiness that I added, which was about a teaspoon, coupled that with the pecorino, which actually has a salty complexion to it as well. And I feel like we sort of nailed it.
And so I have a question for you. Since, you know, pecorino and Parmesan are both saltier cheeses, if
Correct.
Someone doesn't have one of the harder kind of aged salty cheese, is there would a mozzarella work? What would a goat cheese look like? What other kind of options if you don't have an Italian kind of aged Parmesan style cheese?
Yeah, I think a goat cheese could work here. It's a little sour. It's not going to break down the same. It'll get creamy. I don't know that a mozzarella would work here because it may not break down the way you would want it to. But if you wanted to do it in chunks,
yeah,
that could be nice. I mean, I think you could take some liberties here with a lot of different applications with cheeses. I think traditionally you would use something that is a harder grated cheese, but if you did want to incorporate something else, listen, you want to put a big hunk of Boursin?
That would be good.
That would be delicious. So I'm gonna finish this with a little bit of chopped parsley. I'm gonna save a little for the plating so it's fresh. I'm gonna stir it through. And our broccoli is still pleasingly al dente. So it's not totally like formless. So it does have a little texture. So if you're worried that this is a little bit too mushy for you, it's really not, because it has a little bite to it. And those of you who don't know the term al dente, it's an Italian word. It means to the tooth. So it has a little bite. So I'm going to flip out of this camera now and go back to talk to camera. So I'm going to check out of this one.
All right.
Just give me a second.
No problem. So I'll remind everybody they are watching Creative Live TV. This is Andrew Scrivani. He is a world-renowned food photographer and one of our amazing instructors at Creative Live. He has some incredible classes on our website. He recently came out with 2 new classes, food photography for your mobile device and social media for your food photography. So those are 2 brand new classes that just came out this month of his. They're incredible. If you're looking to up your food photography game, I highly recommend tuning into either of those. I will drop some links to those classes after this episode is done, so you guys have easy access to them. Today he is here making a broccoli risotto. He joined us a couple weeks ago and made orange cheese, his mother's or grandmother's recipe, and had a little bit of leftover arborio rice. So he is now back teaching us how to make risotto with that extra rice. And we'll be coming back every Monday while all this is going on to teach you something new to cook for the week, and how to take beautiful photos of it afterwards. So we are just about to the plating portion of this episode, and Andrew is going to show us how to take a beautiful photo of this delicious dish we have.
So I'm back. I was tending to my chickpeas.
Question for you. What was that?
I said I was I was tending to my chickpeas.
Oh, that's quite all right. He also has some chickpeas on the stove. Maybe we'll have to get some tips on our chickpeas for next week.
Yes.
We do have one quick question that's come in after watching this. What is a good side dish you would pair with this risotto? I was thinking of amazing wine that would go with this dish.
Yeah, I mean, I cooked it with some wine, obviously. So a white wine is a good pairing for this. So if something light like a Pinot Grigio or some kind of a lighter like Italian wine, which would be nice, or maybe even something with a little sweetness like a German white. But as far as I think this is a pretty savory dish. It's very kind of, because you add the cheese into it, and when the broccoli cooks down, it's very, very rich and savory. It's a little creamy. I would recommend like sort of a chicory salad, something like that has a little bit of bitterness to it, and a nice like lemony vinaigrette would be a really nice pairing with this as a side dish, because it would break down a lot of that sort of fatty, cheesy, savory, and you'll have that nice play of flavor in your mouth. Now you can achieve that with the wine, you can achieve that with the salad, you can achieve it with both. It's just up to what you feel is your palate for the day. So I am going to show you a plating technique for this. I think it should work, but either way, I'll explain to you what my theory is when it comes to plating risotto for a photo shoot, because there is a little bit of a trick to it. And I may need to play with that food a little bit and add a little bit more liquid or a little bit more oil just to kind of get it to do what I want it to do. But again, I do all edible hacks to my food styling so that the food remains edible and viable so that we can enjoy it afterwards. So, okay. So I got my table sort of set up over there. I'm going to show you what I want to do with this. So let me get the plate I have. Now I don't have like all my regular plates, but this one turns out that it actually works pretty well for risotto because it's flat with a little bit of a lip. So that works out pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that risotto easily kind of falls very flat on a plate. So getting the depth and like a nice stack seems like a big part of capturing a beautiful picture.
Yep, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get it in the middle of the plate to start. And then I'm going to do what I normally do with a risotto to get it to plate properly. I already have a little bit of a mess here. Hold on. I'm going to flip you down so you can see what I'm doing.
Great.
Okay, there's my plate. Okay, I'm a little messy here, so I'm going to grab a little paper towel and just kind of give a little cleanup on the corner. But here's the thing I do with risotto. So you can see is I sort of let it run down the plate. Now this is really chunky, but you can even see that, you see how it's moving?
Yeah.
And I let gravity sort of take it to the edges of the plate. Now this isn't as creamy and it is chunky because it has a lot of vegetable in it, but even just this little bit of rotation is giving it a little bit more of a flattening. And I kind of do this with risotto all the time because it also keeps the plate clean without having to sort of smush it around.
Oh yeah, I mean, I do a little bit of food photography, and that's one of the biggest things is like keeping that plate clean, because even when you have to wipe it down, you sometimes get like those streaks
smears
from wiping it down. So this seems like a great tactic.
So I'm tapping the bottom of the plate as well, and it's kind of creating a little bit of a flattening effect. And you can see that I've gotten it out off that little mound without actually having to touch the food.
Yeah.
Which is sort of the point of it. I got this little outlier here, which is okay. I mean, it kind of feels a little more natural, but I think this is sort of like moving as one now. So I think we've had just about Yeah, so you see that flattening out has really kind of given it a little bit more shape. I'm not crazy about that. So here's what I normally do when I'm styling a plate. I do need to move things around. Chopsticks.
Oh.
So I can kind of selectively pull pieces of this away and place them where I want them if I'm not quite sure that I like where it is. So like even that one, I just want to move it a little bit, and this. So I'm kind of doing minimal damage, and I still haven't sort of smudged my plate. Now this is a shiny plate. I don't necessarily like shiny plates, but this one, I have no choice. I'm here. It's the middle of a pandemic. I mean, what am I going to do? Okay. So I'm going to now give this plate a little color. So I'm going to give it a little bit of pepper.
And it looks like you're kind of purposely letting it fall off of the risotto to kind of have that contrast on the plate.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for jumping in there. I get caught up in this. So now you can see like my plate has this sort of nice organic feel to it. And I'm going to bring it over. I'm going to bring this whole contraption with me over, and I'm going to reset the second cam, and we're going to go over and start playing around with the camera. So, all right. So first I'm going to put you over here where we were last time. I think that's a pretty good space. You can see the tabletop, or do I have to angle down? I think I have to come down a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay, because I was sort of like here last time.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, I'm going to get B cam. I'll be right back.
All right, so we are here with Andrew Scrivani. He is a professional food photographer. He taught us how to make broccoli risotto today, and he's coming back weekly to teach us every Monday at 12 o'clock on CreativeLIVE TV, a recipe to tackle each week, as well as giving us photo tips to figure out how to take beautiful photos of it afterwards so you can make all of your friends jealous with your at-home cooking. He's just setting up the scene to capture the photos. We are all done making the risottos, so if you missed the actual recipe, you can watch this again a little later today, and I will be sharing the recipe and proportions very soon on social media. So if you want to start making this, you can make this tonight maybe. And Andrew is just about ready getting his table all set. We are at his upstate New York house in his very own kitchen. That's what CreativeLIVE TV is. We are bringing you what our favorite creators are doing in their homes right now while we all figure out this new normal. And he's just about ready with this beautiful risotto. It has lots of color. There's some deep greens from the broccoli, then a nice pop from the risotto, and then added a little salt and pepper and oregano, or excuse me, parsley to finish it. He's placing a nice little glass of wine next to it. We were talking about some pairing earlier today, and a nice glass of Italian white wine, or maybe a German, a little cedar German wine from Adobe or somewhere like that. It would be a great pairing. He was also mentioning something like a chicory salad with an acid dressing would be a really good complement to this nice rich pasta. So I will let you take it back over, Andrew, and tell us a little bit about how you're setting up this shot.
Yeah, so I think you can see me here, right? Hi. Yeah. So what I've done is I have a nice northern-facing window here. Most of this, the side of the house is open to the sky. There are no blinds, so it's nice and open, and there's no obstruction. So I have a nice straight, and it's a cloudy day, so I have beautiful sort of diffused light coming in. I have this really nice teak table that I shot on last time. It makes a really nice neutral surface that I can shoot on. You saw me plate the food very deliberately, and then decorate my plate very deliberately. And then now I'm just adding a utensil a little white wine. It's not a particularly good white wine, so I'm not going to be promoting it today, but it's definitely prop wine. And then I'm going to take a shot. So I switched out from my normal 50 millimeter prime lens to my little 50 compact macro that I really like to shoot with. And I'm going to start here and shoot table level, and then I'm going to move to the overhead shot, and I'll switch back to that other lens. So I'm going to just go for it here. So I don't have a whole lot with me here. I don't have reflector cards, and I don't have scrims. I didn't bring a whole lot of equipment here with me because when I do go back to shoot professionally, I shoot in my studio back in New York City. So I also intentionally want to show that, you know, even if you don't have a whole lot, you can make it work. And I think that's part of the whole aesthetic here, is that we're making lemonade out of lemons here, right? So let's go for it and see what we get. So I'm gonna start here in the vertical. I'm picking up edges. I'm gonna show you the back of the camera after each shot, so you can kind of see where I'm headed. And you could see that I'm already sort of framing in that kind of. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
And tell us a little bit about how you're framing it and why.
Yes. So I like to use, this is a little bit of a bigger plate than I'm used to using because the edges are pretty far away from the food in this situation. And I do like to incorporate the edge of the plate into the shot. So I think that it's sort of a medium-sized plate. It's not oversized, and the fact that it has this turned-up lip helps kind of shrink it down a little bit. But that's sort of the purpose of the macro lens, is sort of get close to the food, but still have this edge and bring it all tight together into the frame. So that's where I took that first shot. I said I was going to go table level, but of course I was drawn to the overhead. So I'm gonna go back to that overhead and kind of just give it a little bit more room. And you can see, again, I underexpose my shots very subtly because I like to. I saw that. I underexpose my shots very subtly because I like to be able to push them harder in post.
Yeah.
So if you
tell
lose
us
your
the settings you're at right now.
Yeah, if you lose your whites in when you're shooting, you're gonna have nothing left for post. So I underexpose slightly. It makes my colors richer. It makes my whites cleaner. And then I like to add black and shadowing later. So that sort of helps me a lot. So now I'm going to go again vertical. Again, I'm picking up the edge of the table here, and it's very soft because I'm at like a 4.0 aperture. And I'm being very careful to catch that edge. Oh, it's really pretty. I'm being very careful to catch the edge of the plate, but you could see what I'm talking about. If that plate was subtly smaller, I could get closer to it and still be able to pick up the food, the edge, the plate, the cup, and all of that. So, but the food does look nice. So I'm gonna do a little horizontal of the same shot. Try to stay. Yeah, I'm a little crooked here. Kind of hard sometimes to straighten it out. Anybody else have that problem? I'm sure you do. And again, that's part of this trying to pick up the edge of the plate, where you're trying to pick up the edge of the plate and level off your shot at the same time. Yeah. So we're getting some nice things. I'm gonna get nice and close here, close and low, and pick up some of that wine in the background. And
tell us a little bit about the difference between shooting on, a regular 55 millimeter, versus a macro.
Yeah, the macro obviously gives you a focal point that's much closer to your subject. So like my camera will focus right there, and that's probably 6 inches.
Yeah.
So I think that it's that's the main purpose of a macro, is to be able to get closer and then be able to bring the details of something that's in front of your lens really up into the frame. So that's the main reason. Even though these two lenses are the same focal length, this lens won't focus this close. This will have to be at least 12 to 18 inches away to get a good focus lock.
Mm-hmm.
And this lens will get a focus lock even that close. Oh, that was kind of cool. But here's the thing, when you get that close, you got to give more light into the lens. So you have to change your settings. Change your settings ever so slightly. You see, you get this real dreamy look with the backlighting. So I'm backlit here. Obviously, my light is over here behind me, and I'm shooting against the light. I never shoot with the light. Shooting in this direction will flatten out my shot. It won't look very good. I can shoot cross-lit if I want, so I can turn this way and shoot this way. So I'm here, taking a little bit of a wider look. And you can see it's also, well, that's a little bright, so I'm gonna make adjustments. Yeah, I mean, you could see that this also will work. It's not nearly as dreamy as our other shot, but it is still pretty. And it'll, if you wanted to play with it a little bit more, it's probably more akin to an overhead. Yeah, for sure.
And while you're doing that, tell us a little bit, like I noticed you moved the fork. Oh, that's beautiful. You moved the fork and the glass. You kind of, I assume you're kind of using those props to bring your eye into the food. Tell us a little bit about positioning and like the geometry of the props when you're setting up a shot like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a natural feel to it that when you see what it looks like on the plate, if it looks awkward or if it doesn't look like that's part of what I call the food continuum, where it's sort of like between the cooking and the plating and the eating, you know, would this particular scene actually happen in that continuum, right? Would it feel natural in that continuum? So like right now, you know, taking a few bites, right? So.
How does it?
Tell us how good it is. You didn't know this was going to turn into a mukbang video, right? Okay. See, you don't want to eat on camera because then you can't talk. See, and now there's something like very natural about that look.
Yeah, that's
right. Is that I took like a couple of bites.
Feels very authentic.
Right, because I just took a couple of bites. I kind of positioned it a little differently, but it's sort of a nice organized mess, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like gross. I mean, to put it bluntly, right? Because watching
I think that's the skill people have. It's like, you know, there's a very fine line for something to be purposely messy and then kind of look like it's half-eaten. There's a delicate line there.
Right. I mean, the little half-eaten mess is sort of something I've made a living doing, right? Is that that sort of little messiness to it makes it feel a little bit more real, a little more authentic, a little less precious. And that's, you know, that's part of it. That's part of the charm of food when it's not so precious, because 95% of the time, you're not eating in a 4-star restaurant with this perfectly coiffed plate. You're just eating food. And if you can make it pretty and you can make it interesting looking and you can take a fun picture of it, especially now, we don't have a whole lot of other things to do. It's nice. And then and I thank you if you're posting pictures that are better crafted, you're inspiring other people to do the same. So that's pretty cool. I wish I could share this with you, Kate. It's really quite tasty.
I'm very jealous. I actually have arborio rice and broccoli in my pantry. So I know that I will be making this dish this week. So I will send you some photos afterwards, just so you know that you're a great teacher and that I'm going to try to do this with you after after this week. So we can
terrific.
talk about it. Give me some feedback on my shots next week when you return.
So if you got, do we have time for another shot?
Let's do one more shot.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to the stove and bring the whole pan over, and we're gonna shoot the pan. All right?
All right. So if you're just tuning in with us, we are here on Creative Live TV. We have a few minutes left here with Andrew Scrivani. He is a professional food photographer and is a home chef. He is just popping over to the stove right now to grab this delicious bowl of broccoli risotto that we made today. One last shot for us and show us a little bit of a different style of shot. And he's going to bring that over here in just a few minutes. If you are just tuning in, Creative Live TV is our live stream that we're going into the homes and kitchens of our favorite creators to see what they're doing to stay inspired and connected right now. Andrew is in upstate New York at his house, and he is going to be coming to us every Monday at 12 o'clock PST to teach us a new recipe to make throughout the week and teach us to photograph it. So he's back here now with a pot of risotto that he's zhuzhing up a little bit to take our last shot.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch back to my 50 because I'm not gonna get close on this. I'm gonna just kind of get a nice overhead.
Okay.
And this is a like a cleaner, like sharper lens that's nicer for getting further away. This little guy is like been my stock in trade for a long time. They don't even make this lens anymore, sadly. Okay, so we got it in the pot. One of the things I like to make sure I'm doing when I'm shooting things in the pot is getting some semblance of the handle or the spoon or the edge of the plate or the edge of the bowl so that you have context, because you really don't want to be contextually like not really showing what's happening. And it adds some geometry to it as well. It's pretty nice. So I'm a little bit under, so I'm gonna go. So you can see this is gonna need some work in post-production. It's a little gray, but those colors will come back. My light source today is pretty dim. I'm shooting at about 800 ISO, no, 640 right now. So try to pick up, that's a little better actually. This angle is a little better. I'm gonna show it to you in a sec. It's actually kind of cool, and it has that dreamy quality to it that you can see that nice light bleed in the back. Yeah. Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it. Cool. And then again, I'm using that glimmer off the liquid on the spoon, but you see how close I am? I'm barely able to focus the camera here. So I'm gonna hang it here off the edge, back up a little bit, and I get this sort of romantic, dreamy shot of my risotto. Oh yeah. With the backlit window behind it, and picking up that sort of shimmer off the spoon to show that nice, that really nice. It's a little over still. Let me go back a little bit. Let's see. That's a little better. Okay. Yeah. We're getting some cool stuff here.
Oh yeah, that's really nice.
I can get it lined up in the middle of the window and lose the window frame. It's nice. See, that is a mistake. Is when a professional photographer makes a mistake. What's the mistake? Can you tell?
I don't know. Oh, I can see the edge of the or the like floor in the background. Is that it?
There's two things. Yeah, there's the background with the floor, and then there's the spoon pointing directly at the lens.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I kind of rushed it, and I didn't really look and frame properly, and that's what you get when you don't look at your whole frame. So I just did a little portfolio review for somebody, and they asked me if I would look at their work, and I thought their work, compositionally was okay, but what happened was they were clipping and framing in very awkward ways. And I think they were ruining good shots because they weren't paying attention to the whole frame. They were just focusing on what was in the middle of the frame. And the advice that I gave this person was pay attention to your edges. You've already got the middle of your frame locked down. Your food looks good, your plating looks good, your propping looks good, your light looks good. Now you have to work on your frame. And if you're not paying attention to the perimeter of your shot, you can end up with a shot like I just showed you, which maybe it looks good, but the reality is that it's not sitting in the right setting. Now it looks awkward. You can see the sliding glass door, you can see the spoon pointing right at the frame, and none of that seemed to feel all that good, right? So it's about kind of finding that balance and making sure that you can use the entire frame to your advantage. So what I would do in this situation to correct myself would be to pull this back into a space where I can pick up the edge of the table without picking up that window, just positioning my body and making sure that spoon no longer is pointing at my camera. And that fixed the problem.
Oh, there we go.
So now my background is consistent.
Yep.
And the positioning that I'm looking for with the spoon is there, and I have plenty of sort of context in my entire frame, rather than just focusing on, oh, what's that weird thing in the background, and then you distract your viewer and then they lose sight of how good the picture could be.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Andrew. This has been really fun today. I'm really excited to have you coming back next week to teach us something else. Like you said earlier in this episode, you will be sharing this recipe and proportions on your social, and you'll send it over to me. So we'll share it on our side. So I hope everybody is at home deciding to make this risotto. And please share your photos with us and Andrew. You're using the hashtag WFH Cafe, hashtag Work From Home Cafe. Share them there. I will be looking out for them as well. And I'd love to talk about some of those shots that you guys submit next week. And then we'll go into a new recipe for you guys to make next week. So thank you again for joining us, Andrew. This is so much fun, and I can't wait to make this recipe myself.
Excellent. I hope you do. So thanks so much, Kate. Thanks, everyone. Hope you cook, and I hope you hang in there. And if you want to visit my Instagram page for some more inspiration or some more recipes, really easy stuff that anybody can do, come and check it out. It's just my name, @Andrew Scrivani. So I hope to see you there, too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We'll see you next week, Andrew.
Take care. Bye.
Everyone. Bye.